Hi, I'm Molly.
And I'm Jamie, and this is our From the Pasture with Hired Hand podcast. As the owners of Hired Hand website software, we've been developing websites and creating internet marketing strategies for livestock breeders for the past 10 years.
The majority of our customers are involved in the breeding of registered animals, such as Texas Longhorns, Highland cattle, horses, and whitetail deer, where the pedigrees are very important. The From the Pasture with Hired Hand podcast examines many of the differences in raising pedigreed livestock for maximum profit. Join us and learn what we're covering today.
Today I'm joined by Mike Lutt of Lutt Longhorns from Wakefield, Nebraska. Thanks for joining me, Mike.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So we were just talking a little bit before we started recording here, and I know this podcast will go out this summer, but we were talking about how it's almost, it is turkey season there in Nebraska for bow hunters, and you saw some through your backyard, you mentioned.
Yes. I used to have a landscaping business, and I never had time to do too much spring turkey hunting because of the business. So now that I'm retired, maybe I'll have a little more time to do that.
There you go. So they all feel safe just going through your backyard because you haven't had time to commit to it yet.
Yeah, they're pretty safe here. We kind of like to see them.
Yeah. How far is Wakefield from like some of the major cities that folks might know in Nebraska?
Sioux City, Iowa, we're about 35 miles from that. We're about 2 hours north of Omaha, 2 hours south of Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead and tell me a little bit about yourself and about how you got started in Longhorns.
Well, I'm 61 years old. I've been married almost 40 years. It'll be 40 years this July. Married my high school sweetheart. We dated 7 years before we got married because when we started dating, we were so young anyhow. I have 3 kids, and I have a son and 2 daughters, 5 grandsons and 1 granddaughter. I was a landscape contractor for 35 years, a taxidermist for about 40 years. Both of those I don't do either one of those other than taxidermy. I do some myself. And now I'm staying busy with some Airbnbs that we have and still doing a lot of hunting and take care of the landscapes at our properties that we have.
Nice. So how did you first get started in Longhorns?
I was thinking about that. I'm not quite sure exactly. Being on a family farm all my life, living in the country, my dad had Angus cattle. And then when he retired, we had some facilities that weren't being used. And I got interested maybe online or something like that and bought my first Longhorns from Mike Bowman. I got 6 bred heifers from him, and that's kind of how I got started.
Well, if you're going to get started, that's the way to do it. Getting them directly from Mike. He's pretty well known in the industry. So
yeah, he was pretty good, and he was I wouldn't say persistent, but he was friendly enough. He'd make sure if he talked to you, he'd give it a couple days, and he made sure he'd call you back just to visit and stuff like that. He was very good.
Yeah, I miss his phone calls. I feel like Jamie and I would get maybe, if a couple months had gone by, that was, we'd be like, oh, we haven't heard from him in a while. But yeah, he'd just call, make sure, just visited with you, kind of just kept up on everything in your life and made sure he was
really good that way. He remembered kids' names and different things like that. And my hobbies or different things. He was really good.
Yeah. So do you remember some of those first ones you purchased and kind of what bloodlines of his they went back to or anything?
Yeah. Of course, then I didn't know what I was looking for, but at that time I did like the horns that had some mass to them, and he had a bull, Titan bull that was a Boomerang Lazawi embryo, I'm pretty sure. And so I had a few animals that were bred to Titan. I know that. And I just got 6 different bred heifers that all looked somewhat different. And at that time, I didn't know much about any of the bloodlines because I hadn't been in it long enough.
So where did you go from there? How did you teach yourself and learn maybe to hone in a little bit more on specific things that you liked and all of that?
Well, there was a guy in Norfolk, Nebraska, not too far from me, that had hunts can't command respect at his property. Dick Hoff was his name, and I bought a few animals from him also, and that got me more interested in the pedigrees and learning some of that.
So how many years ago was that you bought your first ones from Mike? I missed that. I'm sorry.
I think it was 2008 when I did that.
So how have things changed within your program, and what is kind of your focus today then?
Well, conformation was always pretty important to me. And then, of course, horn got to be more in the forefront with a lot of the people buying things. I've always been interested in the colors and having the different colors, and tried to improve some on that. But I don't know. There's so many different directions a person can go. It's hard to actually concentrate on that. I've just been trying to breed for things that are attractive to me, things that I like, I guess.
Yeah, I can remember when we first started working with you on your website and some of your advertising and stuff. I felt like it was kind of at that stage where you're maybe shifting gears a little bit, but still being kind of a newer breeder at that time. I think you've done a great job of really just not getting sidetracked, kind of, you know what you like, and you kind of had your vision, and so it's been fun to see you, stick to that and not really stray and kind of get caught up in some of the things you definitely could have got pulled aside on because of, popular genetics or popular sales or that sort of stuff.
One of the things, some of these ranches or herds have a lot different budget than mine. And I guess I'm jealous in a way that they can go get some of these animals and improve their herd pretty fast. And that's not the situation with me. I spend quite a bit of time on some of the different Longhorn sites researching and trying to find things. I remember coming across Dunlucky Dice when she probably only had 60-inch horns at the time. And I'd seen her before, but then I noticed her and thought, that's what I think I want, something like that. Well, I did my research and I found the dam from Dunlucky Dice had been sold, and I got her bought, and she'd froze her horns, and they were curling down and getting in the way of her feeding, so they cut them off. So I paid, I don't know, I think I paid about $6,000 for a Longhorn with no horns. And got her, and then I had semen from 50-50, and so then I produced a few of my animals then that were full siblings to Dunlucky Dice, and did okay on that. Another animal that here recently I've worked on was there was Sweet Maxie, who's the largest total horn cow or tip-to-tip cow in the industry. And I had her grandmother that I bought off of Bowman's consignment sale, and they said in the sale that she was sale barn mean. And you remember going to some of his sales, some of his cows would get worked up pretty good, and there were some mean cows there. Well, she came into the ring pretty good because she didn't have a calf. And I got her bought, I think, for $1,900 or something like that. So then I flushed her to let's see, Rio Ranger, which would give me a full sibling to EOT Maxine, who produced Sweet Maxie. So now I have mine that I call LL Maxine, and I bred her to Sharpshooter. And so now I have a full sibling genetically to the longest horn cow in the world. And so I've had to go about things a little different way, and we'll see if that works out or not. But it's been interesting. Cost-wise, it still costs some money, but maybe a lot less than it would have cost me other ways.
I feel like it just probably took a lot more patience too, right?
Yeah, it did. Yeah. And I still don't really have anything. I have a 3-month-old calf that is a full sibling now. So we'll see if it works out or not.
Now, when I was looking at your website, just to update myself a little bit on today's conversation, I noticed you had some other interesting embryos on there as well on your embryo page. Are you planning to have those play a role at all, kind of in the future direction of your program?
Yeah, for me, I think that's been some of the best way for me to, we'll say, catch up and keep caught up, is to do some of the embryos using some of the best bulls in the country, and using some of my cows, or that's where I've tried to spend a little bit of money on some of my cows to have something that is good to flush to help me step forward a little bit farther.
And do you want to talk about a few of those that you have listed? Are you excited about any of them specifically?
Yeah, there's certain ones I like, and as you know, it's just a long process. You just don't know how things are going to turn out and stuff in the future. I partnered with Freeman Jarnigan on a very colorful bull out of Just Dragon Iron, and that bull has a lot of color. He had an accident here. It was about 2 winters ago. Somehow he busted his skull, and his horn droops now. I was worried that he wasn't going to make it, so I didn't worry about trying to readjust the horn or anything like that. Some people said I could have tried that, but I was just worried he wasn't going to make it. And he's done fine. We're getting nice, colorful calves out of him, and I think that's going to help what I have help sell, because I'll have some better color, and I think we're going to collect him here in the near future and have a semen to sell on that bull. But he's got the genetics, and he does have the color, so I'm hoping that we have some success with him.
So do you feel like a breeder in your position, or kind of at the time frame in your breeding program, do you feel like it took a while for you to figure out the AI, the embryo route? Like, did you teach yourself and do some of that work? Did you take them somewhere? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I don't know how I figured that out. I used to raise hogs, and we used to do some of the artificial insemination and stuff like that. And I've always been interested in the genetics and the colors, and how, you can take 2 animals and yet they're neither one are red, so you think you're not going to get a red calf out of it, and yet you still get a red calf. So there's still a lot to figure out on that yet, but it's something that's interested me. And Bob Larson with RC Larson Longhorns out of Oregon, him and I are friends, and he's been very instrumental in helping me do some of the flushes and things like that. So that's worked out pretty good, and I've bought some embryos from him, that he's used, and that's some of those have gone into my herd and helped me a lot there too. But the embryos and the AI has been interesting to me, frustrating at times. You talk to anybody that's done it, it can be expensive, but I think I am learning, and it's getting more enjoyable now, that's for sure.
Do you have any lessons that you've learned that would create some good advice for maybe breeders who are considering going down that path?
Well, for me, I wasn't doing the sex semen at first, and so the cost for me to have a heifer or a bull calf raised to weaning would be, say, $2,500 would be an average. Well, most of your bull calves aren't going to be worth $2,500 at weaning. Very few of the heifers are. So I would definitely be using the sex semen if you're going to do any of the embryo flushing and things like that, unless you really, want to have a bull calf. Recently here, I've produced another thing. I went online and started looking at things. I enjoy Craig Perez's site, Arrowhead. Yeah. And I was on that and looking, and the Houdini bull has always intrigued me. I have different cows and heifers out of him, and he passed away way too young, and he's one of the few bulls that doesn't have the cowboy tough in his pedigree, and I think he would have been a 100-inch bull, but he passed away too soon. Well, I found his dam. I was lucky enough to purchase that from Cindy Bolin, and then I flushed her to Sharpshooter, which I had owned. And so now I have full siblings of Houdini that are going to be born here in 2 weeks. I have a couple that are going to be born, and then I have several more embryos of that. So my hope is to get a good Houdini sibling bull to maybe get back in the industry with that and have a little bit of an outcross, that something that might be desirable to a lot of people that have so much cowboy tough in their pedigrees.
Did you cross that for both bulls and heifers, or did you just focus on bulls?
Yeah, no, so that one there was the conventional semen. Normally I said I used the heifer sex, but for that one there, I don't care if I do get a bull, because maybe he'll be worth more than the $2,500 at weaning.
Well, it's going to be a hard few weeks to wait, I feel like.
Yeah,
although you've already been waiting a few months, so what's a few weeks more, right?
Yes, exactly.
Well, is there anything else in regards to the future of your breeding program that you're really looking forward to, or kind of have the vision of where you're going?
No, but I hadn't listened to your podcast too much, and we had a long drive to the legacy sale going to Texas. And so we listened to several podcasts there, and different people are talking about the different cow families. I think it was Ross Suber, and focusing on certain families. And I got thinking about that, and I think, I probably have 5 or 6 cow families, and I would do a better job if I would focus maybe on 3 families. So I'm going to try to cut down and have fewer families so I can concentrate a little bit harder on that. And I don't know what direction to go in right now. It's forever changing. I don't know where the tip to tip's going to go, and if I can even keep up with that. I might work more on color and conformation, and of course you're still going to have some pretty big horns on that, but I just don't know if I can keep up with how big some of these cows are getting anymore.
Well, it sounds like a hard decision if you're going to have to cut back on some of the families you've, been working to acquire and build on. I think an important question there then would be too, did you come home with anything from the legacy sale?
No, I didn't. And maybe that's because I took my wife along. And
Rhonda held you down, huh?
Well, she's an accountant and she points out some things to me, and it was a good sale for us, and we want to support the industry, and there's other ways to do that. We just didn't. I bid on several, but didn't end up getting anything to bring home this time.
So do you feel like, so I know she's come to some sales with you, but I've also seen you at some by yourself. Do you feel like when you go to acquire an animal, you look at an animal before the sale, you know that you're maybe going to bid on her. Do you feel like you have your max number and you don't go over that, or have you bid over it a few times if she hasn't been with you and and gone over budget a little bit?
Yeah, I've gone over budget a little bit. There was a cow that I had bought, I think, through the legacy sale online through the online sale. She was a beautiful cow, and I was going to stop at 10,000, but I ended up getting her for 14. So I think that happens to everybody.
Yeah, get a little caught up in it, right?
Yeah. That was Mini Bar was the name of that cow that I bought, and then I think Tyson Leonard. I used her, got some calves. I flushed her with Houdini, got some excellent cows that are still in my herd, and then resold her. And I think Tyson Leonard had her for a while, and then I can't think of the lady's name right now that had her, and she's passed away. But she was a cow that I really liked, and still want to keep some of that breeding in my herd for sure. Very feminine looking females, and some of these females I see anymore, they're not that feminine, and they just don't catch my eye very well.
Love what you're hearing? Be sure to check out our Pickup Truck Confessions. It's a video series where we hop in the truck or rental car and interview a variety of breeders about what drives their passion for their livestock, how they got started in the breed of their choice, marketing tips, and more. And now, back to the podcast.
So I know you mentioned you have kids and grandkids. I know your kids are all grown and out on their own. Do they still get excited about anything with the Longhorns? Do the grandkids like to be around them? What role does your family play in your program?
Actually, my family doesn't play a big role in it like some families. They enjoy them at a distance. The grandkids love to feed them and things like that. My wife, for relaxation, sometimes she'll have a hard day at work or something like that, and then she'll go ride with me. We're in farm country, so to find a pasture that's very big is pretty tough. So we have a lot of small pastures that are on different people's acreages, and I'm very fortunate to have lots of different neighbors that enjoy having 2 or 3 Longhorns with their calves at their place. So she'll get home and she'll want to go check pastures, and we'll go check the baby calves and look at Longhorns, and we kind of enjoy doing that. But otherwise, it's usually me doing the work myself, or sometimes I have a friend come help me if I'm branding or something like that. But otherwise, I just take my time and do stuff myself.
Yeah, like you said, you're pretty fortunate to have neighbors who are willing to, let that happen. Because I know growing up in Iowa and having Longhorns here, everyone thought we were either crazy or they were mean, or, I don't know that our neighbors would have been willing to do that. So that's good for you.
Yeah. I have a neighbor lady that's in her 90s, and she's pulled Hereford bulls or cattle all of her life. and my big unscripted bull jumped the fence or went through the fence and got into her pasture once, and that caused quite a bit of excitement. Not good excitement, but not now looking back at it, it's pretty funny.
Just took a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Well, what other funny stories do you have for us from over the years? Any that you can think of?
I was thinking that the other day. Don't have anything that I would say is too funny. One thing, my dad, when I first got the Longhorns, he shook his head and just, thought it was crazy. But it didn't take too long before he was letting me know that I had a new calf and things like that, because he was checking them and enjoying them quite a bit. So that's one thing. Another thing, I was working cattle one day, and I had a cow. Her name was HR Rum Soda, and she had apparently was starting to come into heat, and there was a young bull calf that tried to mount her, and she took after the bull calf, and they were running down an incline, and she tipped her head down so she could swat him with a horn as she was running after him. And she caught that horn in the ground and basically did a cartwheel and ended up upside down. And she couldn't do anything because her horns now are flipped up and her body's there, and all of her fluids. And she would have died in a matter of minutes, right, if I wouldn't have seen it happen. So she stuck upside down, and at the time she probably had 70-inch horns, and I didn't know how I was going to get her up. I didn't think it was possible, but I didn't have time to go get a truck to try to pull her, or a skid loader or something like that, because I knew she'd be dead. And I was able to pick up one of the horns, and it took all I had to get that horn stood all the way up and basically over my head, and I got her flopped over.
Wow. I don't know if I'd call that funny. That just seems horrible.
Well, it was funny to kind of see it happen. It was funny after it happened, because I didn't know that could happen. And it was very fortunate that I was there to save her. That's for sure.
Yeah. I feel like, unfortunately, some of those pictures we see on Facebook every now and then of a similar accident, or, sometimes when they break their neck that way and stuff too, you're pretty close to that probably.
Yeah. Well, and you learn on Longhorns that you can't use certain hay feeders, and certain gates aren't going to work and things like that, because it never fails. You get one's head stuck in it or horns. So it didn't take too long to figure that out, that wasn't going to work.
Well, we talked a little bit previously about advice you would share to breeders, from things you've learned. Is there any advice you wish someone would have told you before you got started?
Maybe to buy less animals and a little better quality. Buy less and pay for higher quality animals to start with. I think the lower end is too hard to move and keep around, and it costs you the same to feed a $5,000 cow as it does a $2,000 cow. So that would be my advice, that take your time and spend a little more for the ones that you want to get, rather than settling for something that maybe isn't going to produce anything that's worth selling.
Do you feel like you do just as much research now as you did when you were getting ready to purchase cattle and getting started?
No, I probably do more research now. I enjoy the hired hand sites. Anybody that has a hired hand site, just because it's so easy to check prodigy and horn measurements and breeding and all that. It's just it just works so well that I can go to any hired hand site and find all that information. I get frustrated anymore if I go to some other sites that aren't hired hand to find some of that information. It's just not as easy. And when you get used to doing things with hired hand, it's a pain actually to do some of those other sites. And I find myself not spending as much time on those sites. And I think that's what finally convinced me that, well, if I was going to have a site, that's the type of site that I needed to have. And that's probably when you got the phone call.
What are a few of the hired hand sites you've looked at recently that you've done research on? I know you mentioned Gallery of Horns. Are there any others?
I've been on Mike Fritz's site, Ross Suber's. I was checking out Bob Larson's site the other day. There's so many sites out there. A lot of times I'll just be thinking of an animal or something like that, and then I type in that animal, then it takes me to somebody's site, and then once I'm on their site, I check, see what they have for heifers or maybe herd sire prospects or something like that. Mm-hmm. So those would be the sites that I've been on recently.
How much time in your retired week would you say that you spend looking at Longhorn websites?
Depends on where I'm at. If I'm traveling, if I'm in a tree stand, things like that. Just probably a couple hours a week, probably, unless I'm traveling in an airport, something like that. Then I'll spend more time on sites like that.
Don't tell me you're on your phone in tree stands, no?
I have been before.
You're supposed to be up there enjoying it, right?
Well, I do. That's
okay.
for sure.
Okay. So what about if I asked you who your all-time favorite Longhorn cow was, and you could only pick one, who would you pick?
It would probably be Dun Lucky Dice. Yeah, I don't have much of that breeding in my herd anymore. I felt a little small framed, but yet I still love that cow. I just thought that the color and the horns, just a gorgeous cow.
What about your all-time favorite bull?
Oh, that'd be tough. Not sure what bull that would be. I like a lot of the sharpshooter bulls. So I would say sharpshooter would be one that I like a lot. Yeah.
Is there kind of a herd or a program out there that you're just like, yep, that just is like the epitome of Longhorn cattle?
Yeah, there's quite a few of them actually. Of course, I look at Cindy Boland's site and look at her herd, and that's just amazing to me. I look at Nancy Dunn's, look at her animals, and they're all different and better in some ways than others. But there's a lot of herds out there that are just amazing to me.
What about if I put you on the spot and asked you for another Midwestern breeder that you think maybe a lot of folks don't know about and they should go check out, their website to learn more? Is there anybody that comes to mind?
Well, I would say that Chad Smith in North Dakota is really putting some great stuff together. His herd is going to be, that's something that people should pay attention to. There's guys in the industry like, of course, Mike Bowman that helped me out a lot, and he's no longer here. Guys like, so as far as herds, that would be one that I'm looking at. But there's people like Justin Rombeck that have given me lots of great advice. He's been real good. Marty Lancaster. Marty has a site where she sells animals, and she's helped with a lot of information and been real good to me.
Yep. And Justin's in
Those
Kansas and
people
Marty's
are
in
great for the
Colorado.
industry also. Yeah.
And Justin's in Kansas, and then Marty's in Colorado. So yes, both.
Marty moved. I think she's in Missouri now.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about social media for a couple minutes here. So I know you and I have had lots of conversations over the years about social media. I feel like, is it worth the time? Does it work? I want to do this, that sort of stuff. Do you find yourself using social media when you get ready to do some of your research, or, you're looking for new animals? Is that one of the places you go to?
Yes, I do use social media some. I'm on several of the Facebook sites with the different Longhorns Friends, Longhorn Marketing, Friends with the Longhorns. Those I wouldn't say that they've been very helpful for me to sell animals, but it still keeps me in touch, and you learn about things, and then maybe you do more research from there. I haven't found one that I would say is really good for me.
Are you also using those same groups in Facebook to kind of get the word out about your embryos and about your marketing?
Yep. I think I need to do better, and you see some of these people that I think are pretty successful. Well, I think they're on there every day or every other day, and that's just not me. I try to do better, but I'll have to work on that some, I think. You just have to keep your name out there, I think. And people like Daryl Dickinson and things like that, I mean, they spend a lot of time and a lot of years at it, and it works for them because they've learned a lot and have their name out there, and it shows up then more often.
What are the next few sales that you're planning to go to?
I don't know if there's any sales I'm going to make this spring. I thought about the Mocan sale in Missouri. Go down there. There's some good breeders that are selling out. They'll have some good animals down there at that sale. There's always plenty of sales to go to, but right now I'm still working more on what I have and I have enough right now to work on. So I'm not necessarily in the buying market too much right now. Maybe trading, but not buying.
So if folks hear this podcast and they want to make a trip out to Nebraska and see what you've been working on, are you open for visitors? Do you have a lot of people out at the ranch when they're looking to buy?
Yeah, I enjoy having people come out and looking. It's fun to take them around, show them what animals I have, and yeah, I welcome people, and I would love to have anybody that wants to come see what we have or what we're doing. Just contact me, and we'll have a good time.
Well, I feel like I learned some things I didn't know. Hopefully everyone else learned some stuff too. Is there anything else before we sign off here that you want to share about your program or your animals or anything?
No, I think we've covered about everything. I do enjoy the podcast, and I think you're doing a good job on that. And I think it's a good way for, you go to these sales and there's everybody there, and you're like, oh yeah, I recognize that name or I recognize that person, but there's so many people there. You're lucky to talk to somebody for 5 minutes, and it's one of those things that you can learn. I talked to Ross Zuber quite a bit, but I learned quite a bit about him on his podcast, just listening to that. So I think if more people do listen to the podcast, they learn more about a person and what they're doing, why they're doing things. So I think it's pretty valuable to people that are wanting to know more of that.
Well, thank you. That's good to hear. I know Jamie and I get asked sometimes, if we'll do the podcast at an event, kind of like we used to do our pickup truck confessions. But, with having to do the internet bidding now and stuff, and a lot of times we're then involved in like the futurities or different things. It's like you said, it's hard to find the time to, either have us be available for an hour to sit down and do it, or the breeder themselves, a lot of times they're busy taking care of their animals or, networking and that sort of stuff. So I feel like this gives us a great way to get to sit down and catch up with folks as well. I know I really enjoy it too. So
I think this is a little bit better. I think it makes it a little more personal, and it kind of gets you away from the event situation, and you learn more about the person and their herd that way. I think you're doing a good job that way.
Well, thank you. Well, I will link your website and a few of the other breeders you mentioned. I'll make sure to put those in the show notes, but we really appreciate you joining us today. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.